I call the special board meeting on February 6th, 2025 to order. Roll call, Mr. Rivas. Here. Mr. Walk. Here. Mr. Rudy.
Here.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Here.
And myself, Mr. Cabral, here. Flag salute, please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Go ahead. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know, right? Item C, information discussion items. Any person wishing to comment on agenda items may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name. It would be appreciated if you limit your comments to 3 minutes. California law prohibits the school board from taking any action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the board. Per BB policy BB 9323, individual speakers may be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda and our non-agenda item. The board may limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. At this time, any member would like to speak to the board? All right. Section 1 tonight is going to be our board budget workshop. And we can go ahead and start.
Good evening. I'm waiting for Edward to pull up the slides. We're gonna go through some slides. It's in your packet, there were some documents for your reference, and I'll kind of refer to those later. You won't really need them right now, but they're for your information for later. Is it on? Oh, there we go. Okay, so this workshop is to kind of go over the budget and how everything fits together for both the LCAP, the budget, how the whole process goes through. So is really to go over what are the fundamentals, give you an overview of kind of where we are, and then to show you how we align budget priorities with the district goals for both the LCAP and the strategic plan. And then just to help you make informed decisions. So the process is a year-long process. Right now we are in February. The governor releases budget in January. That's the preliminary numbers that we start with. Right now we are starting our LCAP meetings. We did YOLO and Von Renner this week. And then as the month goes, we will be doing staff meetings at each site. And then we'll bring in community meetings. Each site will have a team. And then we go into the whole budget writing process. In May, the governor will revise his initial proposal. And then in June, the budget and the LCAP will get adopted. So right now we're kind of in the planning phase. The audit phase kind of goes all year where they're looking at everything. We're starting right now on the interim audit for the current school year that we're in. During the summer, once the budget's adopted at both the district and the state level, then we start closing the books for this current year that we're in. So we're always working in at least 2 fiscal years, either the current and the prior, or the current and the subsequent year. And then in December, we have the first interim, which starts off the new year again. Right now, we're working on second interim, which will go to the board in March. So the local control funding formula has several factors, and we have a lot of different places that we could pull the information. So the first one, the one that everybody focuses on, is the cost of living adjustment. And we get that from the school services dartboard, which is, there's a copy of the dartboard that's in your packet. It comes out several times a year. Our ADA, which is our average daily attendance, comes from the most recent attendance reporting. The property taxes come from the county treasurer certification. Those are certified 3 times a year. And then our unduplicated pupil count, which is our count of students who fall into one of the categories of either English learner, low socioeconomic, or foster youth, and that's tracked in the CalPADS data system. So the local control funding formula is where the bulk of our funding comes from, and it's composed of several components. Everybody in the state gets the same amount of base grant per ADA. So you can see where we plugged in the ADA. The ADA is calculated right now on, the state takes the best of your current year ADA, your prior year ADA, or a 3-year average. The state just automatically grabs the highest number. Then there are grade span adjustments for kindergarten through 3rd grade and 9th through 12th grade, because it is more expensive to run those programs. We have class size reduction in the early grades, and then we have the career technical education requirements in high school. Then where the unduplicated percentage comes in, that 71.61%, that's our average for our unduplicated pupil count. If it's over a certain level, we get additional money through the supplemental and concentration grants. And then there's an add-on for home to school transportation. This is the first year since the LCFF started that COLA has been applied to the home to school transportation. And then we have the transitional kindergarten add-on, which they've just started the last couple of years doing that as well. So the money for the LCFF comes from property taxes, Proposition 30, which they call the Educational Protection Account, and state aid. They apply the property taxes first to lessen the burden for the state aid. So the calculator that is put out for us is, it's basically an Excel spreadsheet that comes from the state. So we go in, we plug in the numbers, and then it gives us several pages of calculations. But what we're looking at, this is a snapshot of this year, next year, and the following year, what we'll use for the multi-year projections. So what I've highlighted is the COLA that was funded for this year was 1.07%. But the actual COLA that the district realized was negative 1.05. That's because of declining enrollment. That's because of several factors. Mostly it's due to the enrollment in the ADA. So not every district will realize the full amount of the COLA. So we are actually receiving less funding this year than we did last year. Next year, the COLA is supposed to be, I think, 2.43. That's what it's projected right now. We're looking at probably having 1.18% actual realization. The third year, it gets a little bit better because things finally start to bounce back a little bit. So what are our projection as a first interim? I'm still working on second interim, but the first interim, this is where we need to look at. Our beginning balance was just under $20 million. And you see where our revenue and our expenditures are not balanced. Part of that is due to we had a late settlement last year. So all of our retro payments to staff for last year's settlement are paid this year. So basically we're paying an expense we should have had last year, but we paid it this year. So it's coming off the ending balance. So we're looking at about a $7.5 million deficit this year. Going into next year, we're shortening, we back that one-time payment of the retro out, but we still have an unbalance of a little about $4.5 million. So we're working on ways to move things around to really make sure we're maximizing all of the one-time dollars to make sure that we can bring this closer together. So when you look at revenue, you can look at them several different ways. There's ongoing funding versus one-time funding. And then there's restricted funding, restricted versus unrestricted. So our examples of our ongoing funding. We have state lottery, which is unrestricted. And then there's also an instructional lottery, which is restricted. And then we have career technical education. It is ongoing, but we have to apply for it. It's ongoing in that the state funds it, but it's not guaranteed that we're going to get it. Ag incentive grant, the Prop 28 money is now ongoing. It's an ongoing apportionment. The ELOT money, the expanded learning opportunity, and the ACEs, those are ongoing apportionments. So those we do have to do applications every 4 or 5 years, but that is ongoing during the grant period. So all of the career technical education funding is by application. So we have some one-time categorical programs as well, and all of these are restricted. So I've included in your packet some descriptions of all of these different programs, what they can be used for, what they can't be used for, and when they will sunset. So those are in your board backup for tonight. So federal funding are very specific purpose. There are very tight strings attached to them, and they're ongoing restricted funds. I don't know what will happen. We're getting a lot of mixed signals about what's going to happen with the federal funding. But what we're looking at is our Title I, II, III, and IV, which are used for different programs. The Title I is for low-income students. It's determined by how many low-income students we have. Title II is for professional development. Title III is for English learners. And Title IV is for rural programs. It's not a lot of money. It's about $50,000 a year. Our national school lunch program, about 60% is federal. The special education IDEA funding is a smaller portion of our special education funding. And then the Perkins Career Technical Education, we are in a consortium with Denair and Houston to get this is another small pot of CTE money. So our ongoing revenue without the National School Lunch Program is about 2.3 million. That's what's at stake if things go south with the federal funding. With the National School Lunch reimbursements, we're looking at about 3.6 million. So where is the funding? Where does it go? The funding goes, it's broken out by different areas. So about 77% of the funding comes from the LCFF, and about 76% is dedicated to salaries and benefits. So when you look at the dartboard, School Services puts this out every year, and it comes out about 3 times a year. Comes out in January when the governor releases his budget. Comes out in May at the May revise when he revises what the projections are, and then it comes out after the state budget's adopted. And so it has all the planning factors for how we calculate the local control funding formula, what the COLA is going to be, what the consumer price index is, interest rates, all of that, STRS, PERS, everything we need to project what our revenues and costs are going to be. So all of this information is in one place, and a copy of the dartboard's in your backup. So then salary and benefits are the biggest part of the budget. So what goes into projecting those? We look at how many full-time equivalent positions we need in each group. We look at our enrollment and our average daily attendance. How many FTEs do we need based on the statewide averages, on ed code, on contractual factors? We need different amounts depending on how many TK students we have, because the ratio changed from 1 to 12, 1 adult to 12 students, and next year it's going to be 1 to 10. Step and column, what's the increase for the same group of employees from 1 year to the next? That's what we call step and column. A person automatically moves on the salary schedule. They go from F13 to F14. That's what they call a step and column increase. Whether or not there's a settlement increase, that alone is an increase. So what the calculation for that, I'll walk you through in a moment. But that is something we have to factor. And then was there a negotiated salary increase? So the step and column calculation, you compare the same group from one year to the next, and what is the cost from one year to the next without any kind of salary increase. So you take the group that was employed in May of the first year, and then you compare them to that same group of people in October. So, and then you look at the difference and you find that will become your gross cost. Then you look on the people that were on the May list, but not the October list. Those are people who left the district. And then you add up their salaries and you count how many FTEs. Then you look at the people on the October list, but not on the May list. Those are the replacements. So then and then you take because that cost is lower, that's a savings. And then you look at the net cost. It's a little more complicated when the number of FTEs is not the same year to year. There are some other adjustments into the calculation, but that's pretty much how that works. So our current staffing levels, we have 168.4 teachers, and then you can see the rest of the breakdowns. So of those 168.4, we have people in different areas. We have 4.5 intervention teachers at the elementary level. We have 22.5 special ed teachers, not including the virtual teachers that I think we have 2 virtual resource teachers. We have teachers that are doing art and music and performing arts instruction, educational technology who supports the teachers. We have 1 TK5 PE teacher who allows for our elementary teachers to have some PLC time. And then we have 5 ag teachers that go between YOLO and the high school. And then we have 17 teachers in the dual language immersion program. And then here is the breakdown for admin, district and site admin, and then support staff. You can see it takes a lot of people. There are admin to teacher ratios, which really don't account for how many programs the state has put on us to measure, to do accountability for. So classified and confidential groups, they include district support staff, instructional support, and site admin support. So looking at statutory costs, it costs about 36% for a classified person on top of their salary with statutory benefits. The PERS rate is actually a little bit higher than that, and it costs about 21.5% on top of base salary for statutory costs for a certificated person. So the primary part of that is the paying into the retirement. And the state pays, the district pays some, and the employee pays some. So we do have some positions that are categorically funded. We have the intervention teachers at the TK5 are paid with one-time funding. The funding is such that we can stretch it out 2 or 3 more years, and there are some new categoricals that we hear are in the proposal. We're not counting those for second interim because they are just proposals, but they could come down the line. So some of the positions that are with one-time funding are through grants, and some are through billing that the clinicians and the providers actually go back and bill for. So materials and supplies include all the things you see, anything that the students use, anything that is consumable. That's what it goes into that category. And then we go into the site budget development. But, so the site budget development, every site gets unrestricted lottery and then, and Title I. So the way we do the lottery is we look at how many FTEs of teachers we have across the district, and we divide the lottery entitlement, the lottery apportionment by that number. And then we look at, say, Bonner has 28 teachers, we give 28 times whatever the per teacher's amount is. So every teacher receives a base $500 classroom budget, and then the remaining, the site gets to decide how they want to use it. So I sit with them and we figure out what are your site priorities? Do you want to do field trips? Do you want to have assemblies come in? What is your focus next year? And we design their site budget around that. So Title I is allocated on how many students at their site generated that funding, because it's based on low socioeconomic, and we have a count for each site, how many students they have. So it's allocated that way. And it's more restricted, and we use it primarily for supporting libraries and professional development. And then the Prop $28, 20% is allocated to the sites, 80% has to be used for staffing. So we make sure that we have enough staff to run those programs, and we do have art at the K-12 level all the way through, and we make sure that the arts department has a committee to decide how best to prioritize that 20%. Career technical education is a big part of what we do at the secondary. And so we allocate those based on the grant application. So this year we applied for the Career Technical Education Incentive Grant. We get that almost every year. We apply for $600,000 or $700,000. We're lucky we get like 250, 260. So once we come back with the application, we look at what we applied for, and then we go through and we prioritize, okay, what can we actually do? And we are looking at year to year. This year we applied for several different large grants, and we knew we wouldn't get all of anything, so we moved things around. So if we got funded on one, or if we didn't get funded on one, we would have a backup plan. So the state is looking at having what they call a consolidated application, which is just one form that you do for all of the CTE money, which would be great. Because all the timelines are different, all the reporting is different. It would be nice to be streamlined. So outside services, it makes up about 16%. This is all of our legal fees, insurance, audit fees, things like that. Any kind of agreements that we have, travel and conference, professional development, things like that. And then capital outlay is a small percentage of the general fund budget. It's much more prevalent on the facility side. So it can consist of all of these things, but it's really in the general fund, it's more of equipment. Anything costing over 5,000, next year it'll be over 10,000, will be coded to that. So there are legal and regulatory requirements for budgeting. We have to keep a minimum of a 3% reserved for the current and the 2 out years. But 3% is not sufficient to ensure positive cash flow. The district minimum has been the standard has been 8%. And there's the calculation for how you determine that. So the district has to be audited annually, and we have to publish our audited financial reports to the state controller, which will come at the next board meeting. So then we go into the LCAP. And what this does is it takes the available funding and the needs and priorities of the district, and it brings them together, and it uses data to really prioritize, and it makes the district accountable because it looks at what are your actions going to be and what are the outcomes. So we take input from all areas of the district, and anybody can comment on the LCAP process. So we have to address the 8 state priority areas to improve student outcomes. And it goes from basically having clean classrooms, having your standardized curriculum, implementing the state standards, making sure every student gets access to the core as well as supplemental education programs. And then it looks at pupil outcomes. How are our students making growth? What's working, what's not working? And we can use standardized testing, we can use local assessments, or we can use other local indicators. But they really want parent and student engagement. They want involvement in the decision-making process. They want to know, how do we fix chronic absenteeism? How do we keep students engaged? So your role is to help with the goal setting the direction for the district. You can be part of the process when we have the community meetings. And then really looking at the data metrics to see we have to assess the effectiveness of the programs that we're funding. If it's not working, if it's not effective, and we're not making growth, why are we doing it? And then your responsibilities for the budget are to review and approve it and to provide oversight. We'll do the interim financial reports to look those over to make sure that we're going in the right direction and we are remaining solvent. So our biggest challenges right now are declining enrollment. Basically, our kindergarten classes are coming in smaller than our 11th and 12th grade classes that are leaving. So that automatically makes a decline. Our grade level classes are getting smaller especially in the elementary levels. We don't know what's going to happen with the federal funding, as if the Department of Education is just dismantled. We're not sure where that will leave the states. And then we have an increasing special education population, but not increasing special education revenue. Right now, our special education dollars cover about 38% of the actual special ed expenses, which is part of the reason why the deficit is kind of where it is, and we're working to correct that. So one thing that we look at when we get into writing the LCAP is we look at the data points. So this is taken straight from the dashboard, and it has the district, and then it has each of the school sites as well. And it looks at the indicators and you can see in the 2023 column, the left column of each area, in 2023, we were red in several areas. In 2024, we came out where it's now white. That means we made growth, enough growth to not be red anymore. So we are making improvements. The third column with the ELs, the difference, we were not in differentiated assistance prior to this, but this year they added in the long-term English learners. And so now everybody went into the red category. So that's obviously going to be a focus area for us. We need to address that. How are we going to correct that? Chronic absenteeism has improved significantly. We had put that as one of our actions in the LCAP, and that's been working. And then we're still looking at our suspension rates for certain subgroups. So this is what we'll look at to really drive the focus when we start writing the LCAP. So now we want to kind of look at what are your priorities as a board. What are you seeing that we need to be looking at and doing as we go forward?
Yeah, I have a few questions as well, but does anybody want to go first, or it don't matter who? Doesn't matter to me. You want me to break it down?
I just had just a comment on something. You gotta turn the microphone off.
Oh,
On the. I asked this year where there was field trips and I was told that elementary has none. And I asked the reason. My son, of course, he's in fourth grade, says, the teacher says, because they have no money. Is that part of this that I'm reading of the site budget?
Well, yes, each site gets to decide how they use their site budget. Some sites do put money toward that. Transportation is really, really prohibitive this year. So a couple of sites said, we're not gonna do field trips. We're gonna bring things here. We're gonna do walking field trips. It's not because there is no money. It's because the priority, the focus at that site was to use the money elsewhere, and that's their decision. That we say, here's your allocation. You decide as a team. You know, the site admin
And that's
decides.
the site admin, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so, and because I'll budget money for transportation, but when they're looking at spending $15,000 and maybe each grade level gets one trip. He's saying we could better use this to do other things.
anybody else? Be shy.
So last year, when you guys approved a 5% ongoing salary increase, that was with one-time money?
No, that was with ongoing money. We did the year before where we paid the retro out of one-time money. But no, because you can't do an ongoing raise with one-time funds.
Anybody else? All right, Carolyn, I have a couple questions actually.
Okay.
If we go back to slide number 8, Edward.
The revenue sources?
Yeah. So I have a question on the last time we discussed the budget and stuff like that. Our 24-25 number was nowhere near -7.5 million. So how come tonight that number is so much larger than it was last time we talked?
No, this is right from first interim. This is restricted and unrestricted. So probably you're thinking of the unrestricted, which is not this high. But with the
Right.
restricted dollars, a lot of times with restricted dollars, you'll get funding 1 year. So we might have gotten it 2 years ago, but we're spending it this year. So that's gonna show up as a deficit. So as we are getting rid of all the one-time money, we're gonna see a larger deficit on the restricted side. So this is restricted and unrestricted. The unrestricted numbers is probably around 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, I got it, it makes sense now. Then if we go to. The slide 26, Edward, please. The page 9, yeah, slide 26, page 9. So I know every time we talk about dollars and the budget and stuff like that, the state, correct me if I'm wrong, so I think I'm right, the state sets how much percentage of our budget to go to the reserve fund, which is what, 5%, correct?
3.
Or is it 3?
It's 3.
Okay, so I know we've heard multiple times over the last few years of the district wanting to stay at a certain percentage. Where is that?
What do you mean, where is it?
Where do I find that information to
On the-
cross-reference, right?
It's on the multi-year projection.
Okay, it is in there?
Mhm.
Okay,
It's probably on page 6 of the multi-year projection.
okay. That's all I have. Anybody have anything else?
In December. Yeah. And it'll be on the second interim will be on the March board meeting. And what that is that number is basically you take you take your ending balance and you take, you multiply the 8% times the unrestricted and restricted expenditures.
Right.
And then you can designate above that. The state has put in, because of the rainy day fund, they didn't allow us to carry more than 10%. So, but the next 2 years, we're getting close to the 8%. So, but what happens is not all of the reserve is cash. So in order to make sure that we can make payroll and to maintain our cash flow for getting bills paid, we need it, 3% is just not, is not gonna get us there.
Agreed. Anybody have any other questions? All right. I think, to talk about some of the priorities, like some of the things that I've seen over the last few years is actually getting for what we're paying for. There's a lot of money that we're spending. We need to verify that we're spending those dollars like to the best of our ability to get the biggest bang for our buck. And then just by looking at the numbers, I mean, the inevitable is coming, right? Like we have to make cuts and we have to, draw down the force because our enrollment is going down. The attendance is continuing to decline. So we're up against two different areas that we just can't control. I mean, we tried a couple years ago to hire a attendance person to try to drive up the attendance and do whatever we can. That didn't work. Our numbers actually went down drastically. I just don't know what else we could do to try to help getting more kids to come to school every day. It's just one of those things that it's just going to be a part of everyday life here at the school, right? Like these kids are not going to just come every day. I don't even know like how many kids we have like perfect attendance anymore. If I'm sure it's a pretty limited number. But it's going to school every day in today's day and age is just not going to happen. It's just one of the factual things that we just have to face reality. So I think at first, is one, we have to look at, where we can, make cuts and, with the least amount of impact in the classroom. I mean, nobody wants to, downsize their workforce, but we just don't have the wallet to afford that, and unfortunately it's going to have to come from, we can't just pick and choose on what area of the school district we can grab the most money from, but it's going to have to be, we're going to have to prioritize those positions and we're just going to have to start, having some difficult discussions because when we're not talking about a few dollars here, we're talking millions and we're not going to cut millions of dollars by not buying pencils and paper for a month. We're just not going to do it. So that's the biggest thing. That's the first priority that we're going to have to talk about and address is how do we stop the bleeding first, per se. And then we'll have to see what we actually need and going forward and look at the enrollment numbers for next year and, see if we get the money from the state, if it does actually increase. So, I mean, we can only just take it one day at a time, but we do have to start looking at that now for the next upcoming school year. So, but I'm sure we'll get there at some point. At least close the gap some. So. Anybody else have anything?
I know how to get kids to school. They have a field trip to look forward to, maybe.
No, if you can't pay for it. We can't give people that, we just honestly don't have. I mean.
Well, that one just bothered me.
I was
like,
I
what?
mean, it's tough. I mean, it is. We just
I
can't
mean,
do.
part
what
of it too
we can't
is,
afford.
that transportation,
Yeah.
so maybe teachers don't want to go type thing too. Could possibly be it.
The biggest challenge for that this year was transportation. It's been the last 3 years since we came back in person that we're having to get charter buses for things. I mean, we allocated a lot of money for athletics for transportation, there's, what we've done. What we have told sites, if they wanna do field trips, you're looking at least $15,000 to $20,000. Just for transportation, when you have 80 or $100,000 for your site budget, that's a big chunk of it. And so they're thinking, when you're talking about bang for your buck, is it gonna be bang for our buck to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on charter buses? When we could use that money to do something else meaningful for instead of going for 3 classrooms, we could do something for the whole school site with that money. And that's the priority, that's the prioritization that the sites are doing. So that, looking at what gets them bang for their buck at the site level.
Also, we are trying to make a difference with our busing. It looks like First Student has come up with a plan. We're actually starting to see some movement on improvement there. So that has been good to hear and good to see. I know Melissa's been working with some I guess a partner company with them to provide some transportation for our special ed students that are maybe 1 or 2 students instead of having a bus for 1 kid. So they're working on some things there. With our sports alone in the spring, originally they said that they could not provide any buses. Right now, they are covering about 2/3 of our trips. That will save us quite a bit of money. And if it keeps improving, hopefully they can start doing our field trips, our sports trips, and again, that stops somewhat, like you're saying, stops the bleeding a little bit when we can start providing that transportation. When you look at, just an example that I have, if we could have been able to use our busing company to go to the Hillmar football game, it would have cost us about $1,200, $1,500. Instead, they had no buses available. We ended up spending about $8,000 to go to Hillmar. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
So, and we don't want to start saying, oh, just drive yourself, because then that's a huge liability we
we're
take
liable
on.
for
So,
that, too.
so it is a big cost that we are working on, and we do feel like we're making some ground with First Student now. So it's been a nice change.
Just for off the top of your head, Carolyn, do you know what we pay for athletics transportation, either to contract or to charter buses or the company? What do we pay say every school year? Just an estimate.
This year, well, I just looked at it. This year we budgeted 180,000.
That's what we budgeted. What do we actually pay?
We're probably at about 2/3 of that. We still have spring sports to fully encumber. We may, depending on how much First Student can take onto that, but that's pretty much gotten us through fall and winter sports. We still have spring sports to get through.
So anywhere from 200 to say 250 a year on average, just rough estimate,
No, we haven't ever paid that much. 180 is probably the highest we've gone.
180.
Yeah.
Another option too is I know, like, I look at, Houston School District, because, we coach at the high school and we go on all these trips, and I think it's funny that a Houston School District bus picks us up to
Mhm.
takes us somewhere. And I'm like, why are we paying you people? Like, obviously that's the transportation that's available, but I've said this to Justin, too, is I think we need to at least check into the idea of buying our own buses for transportation for extracurricular sports, athletic events, field trips and stuff like that, instead of paying other people to take our kids places. Right?
Yeah, there's,
So, we could hire our own employees to drive the buses. Yes, I know there's gonna be a maintenance cost and stuff like that, but a lot of these school districts are doing that, and they're saving a lot of money. So, we wouldn't need that many buses. I'm not suggesting we take on a fleet of 20 buses. That's not what we're trying to do, but if we can look at getting maybe 3 and establish some type of part-time employee list to availability, if they're available, like, hey, we gotta go to Patterson, or we have to go to Hillmar or Houston. Do we have anybody available to help offset that cost, right? Cause I'd rather pay a part-time employee and use our bus and equipment and save a couple $100,000 a year than, cause once we buy the buses, we buy the buses. There's no really cost except for like D&B fees, maintenance fees, stuff like that, and obviously the driver, right? So, that might be an option too for us to save us some money on the transportation side. So,
we can look into what that would entail.
But in the past, we had what, first student, was, when I was in school, we always had. The first student.
Yeah, I believe it was
Yeah.
Patchett's first student. It's had been a couple different names. Really, what we're looking at is there's been a shortage of drivers.
Yeah.
And so they work their shift during the day and they can't put in the hours in the, because again, the hours requirement or what they're allowed to do has changed as well.
Yeah.
So what first student is doing right now is they are going out and recruiting their retired drivers to do the charter trips, the after school hours, and to fill in those areas. So it doesn't interfere with the home to school trips. So.
Anybody else have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, but I mean, I agree with Don when, you know, you're 76% of your budget's going to salary. I mean, with the projections that are coming, there's just no way staff's not going to be affected. You know, I would prefer to do it through attrition. You know, people leave, people retire. I don't know if anybody's retiring now, but maybe, you know, looking at not filling their positions and, you know, reallocating.
Yeah, so Derek, one of the things we're starting to look at is those positions are vacated. We are assessing whether the work can be done by not hiring, you know, or replacing the position, I should say. And we will be looking as retirements or people leave positions, whether we refill based on if there's a need or not. We will also look at both our certificated classified management positions to see if, you know, as people leave those positions or if there's a need for those to continue some of those positions. And if we could, you know, reduce force there, I think that's what we're really looking at. One of the things when we start looking at management, in other districts, when we start looking at it, and I'm not saying this is who's getting cut, I'm just throwing this out there. When we start looking at our management positions, for example, we start looking at counselors, learning directors. Most other districts consider those positions are part of the certificated teacher representative group. Here we have them as part of management. So it makes it look like our management numbers are a lot higher, so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that throws it off. But we do want to look at all these different areas. When we start talking cuts, we want to ensure that they're equitable across groups, so that not one group has more than another group, because that is very unfair, so on and so forth. And you know, if you look at certain positions, some when you do reduce it, they lead to more money actually being saved versus others. So those are the different things we look at. And this isn't an area that we're happy to look at and all that. This is not the fun part of this job. And
No.
you know, I know I came in last year and that's what I dealt with. And you know, here we are again. But you know, we'll try to do what's right and what's fair in this case. And you know, when we're talking, you know, I'm looking at, you know, 3.7 million, 7 million deficit at this point. Yeah, and like you mentioned, 70% of our budget comes from people. You know, there's no other way to look at it. That's where we're looking. But again, attrition, we'll look equitably across the different representative groups to see where we can make those changes. And you know, unfortunately, you know, some of it may have to be that we're, you know, using some of that money from our reserve to make up for some things as well. So it's kind of where we're at. You know, kind of grim times, but we'll get through them. This isn't the 2008 year where it was a lot grimmer, I'll tell you that. You know, but you know, there is some stuff that we're going to need to do.
And one of the things that we did last year as well, I know you guys weren't here, but we had early retirements that we were able to get some people off the books and let them retire early. I'm not sure how many people we have this year that will qualify for that, but I think last year we had 7 total. I don't remember exactly the number.
If I recall correctly, we had 9 that were eligible under the CSCA one that we created. and 8 ended up taking it. one
Okay, 8,
is still
okay,
with
yeah.
us.
So there was a couple things
Yeah.
on top of the, attrition positions open. We did a couple things last year to kind of help ease the burden a little bit. I'm kind of glad we did that, not really, wasn't our intention, but it helped us a little bit to be a little bit in better shape this year. I mean, we're still pretty bad, but I mean, it would have been a lot worse this year if we didn't do that, so, you know. Anybody else have anything? No. All right. Sir, you have anything for us?
Yeah, I would just kind of like to wrap up again. What I'm hearing is, one of the comments you made was we're spending a lot of money. We need to make sure we're getting something in return, which is basically the return on investment is kind of what you're looking at, right?
Yep.
And then, attendance, and I believe our attendance, the percentage of attendance is actually pretty flat. It might be up a small percentage but it's still pretty flat. The problem is we lost students. So our attendance percentage isn't quite what it was before COVID at 96%. It's down 93 somewhere, I believe, total district.
93 point something.
Yeah, so we kind of lost that percentage from before. We also lost students, so it's kind of a double whammy, but our attendance didn't drop from our percentage of attendance didn't drop from last year, but the number of us students has dropped. So it's 93% of less students than last year was 93% of more students. So that's part of the difference there, that you see the COLA drops, because if we had 100% of our students 100% of the time, we would actually realize more of the COLA, but that's not what we have. So we see that. So, and then the other one is any cuts we make, you want the least amount of impact in the classroom. And I think that was a lesson learned from 2008. We did everything we can to cut everywhere we could except in the classroom. And then, and looking at reducing staff in a humane, way. So,
I do have a question.
yes.
So I know that you mentioned something about the mental health clinicians, and I know at YOLO there is a gentleman that's coming from, I believe, the county. How is that going to impact for the mental health clinician people? Are you planning on maybe cutting that area in some places too, or does that qualify under the grants?
Well, that grant, that is funded through a grant that ends in June. So we're looking at extending the contracts as far out as we can. I think they can go through December. So until, if there's some additional grant funding that comes our way, then we can apply for that to continue. But that was a 2-year grant that is ending, to where we have the additional contracted services.
I just wanted to say one more thing. If you know of any TK or kinder families out there that need to get them enrolled, please encourage them to get them enrolled. Our numbers as of this week, 12 TK, 4 kindergarten enrollees this week. And we just opened enrollment this week, so
So I know I
encourage
seen
the
something
families
on-
out there.
I know I see something on the website. I know we've posted stuff on our Facebook page before. But maybe that's something we could maybe send out, like Parent Square, and just more information. I don't know if we've ever printed like flyers. I don't know if that's a thing
Yeah.
anymore in 2025. I don't know, but I'm here for suggestions.
Yeah. So I know we, in like the utility bills, if I'm correctly, there was a flyer or information placed in that. So
Okay.
everyone got that. So it's just, just if we know people out there that have those, 4 or 5-year-olds that haven't enrolled them yet, really encourage them to get it, because we do need to get these numbers up. I mean, and I just wanted to.
What about, we ever think about maybe putting an ad like in the newspaper? I don't know what they would charge us for that, but is it a lot? Okay. Huh?
Probably about $500.
For like what, 2-3 papers or a
Or-
month or?
No, probably
Per-
each week.
Per each week?
Mhm.
I guess I might have to pick up Dr. Salem and drive the neighborhoods. Like I.
Why aren't they?
Something that always helps is if you guys see it on social media, like it and share it, because
I do that too.
we're, right now, they could be having a 3-year. Our families might have a 3-year-old, they don't have older siblings, they have to hear about it some way, but we don't know. Because that could be a 3-year-old right now that's going to be eligible for TK next year.
Well, that
So,
was my question, is
yeah.
like, why aren't they registering? Is it just because they don't see it, or is it,
I think
they're not
part of-
trying to get them to go to school?
No, I think part of it is a lack of awareness and education. I mean, even like, my son's in kindergarten. I had no idea even how the process started until like, late in the summer. So I wasn't sure, where to find the registration, when it started. It wasn't until I talked to parents within the district that I became more aware about the process. So I think we could potentially do a better job of helping those incoming families get that information, whether it's, like you said, in the utilities bill, but somewhere where they're going to see it for sure. Yeah, because I mean, if you don't know, you're not gonna sign up. So,
So is it strictly registering online right now at this point, or do we have like a date and time where at one of the schools in the evening where we
it's
can
in person.
do like an
Every-
in-person sign up
every Monday at any site, they can go register.
Mhm.
Is it the
during the
district?
day or?
District or any elementary site during the, afternoon, right? It's the 1 to 4.
So,
So every Monday, 1 to 4.
can we maybe mix in there like, a couple evenings where parents get off of work and can go to like the school and we can rotate the schools between Barrington, Hunt and Von Renner and just have like an in-person informational registration night or something?
Wasn't there one here? Like, 4
We
years
used to
ago?
do it here for the whole district, and we had certain days lined up. That's what, back when we had, I think, 1 or 2 nurses. But now every site has the capacity to register students.
Okay, I remember I came here and. we were
That's an option
here,
too.
So I was just, okay.
Is that something we can do? I don't care what day.
It's
of the week.
something we will have a discussion, Heather, would do, when we have our cabinet this Monday coming up,
Okay.
something, yeah.
Okay.
Because, yeah, it's,
I'm not computer savvy, but I can show my face and help out with
Right, yeah,
pass
sure.
out pamphlets.
Yeah, that's where I was just confused, like.
Yeah.
Why aren't they registering? Just 'cause they're not trying to go to school, or they just don't, I thought you had to go to school. I was like.
And then maybe too is maybe print like some
Elsa, do you
registration
wanna go to the
flyers that we
microphone?
could give to the current like TK kids because they're gonna be in kindergarten next year or TK again, right? Like, so
Mhm.
maybe we can give those kids at school, maybe a little flyer to put in their backpack to take to their parents. I don't know if their parents will get the flyer, but
Don?
I don't know.
Mr. Corral, Elsa Juarez has a quick question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but before I forget, I know we've heard over and over that we have a declining enrollment. Do we have the number of how many students that is, like a total number, what we have lost?
We're right at, I believe, 35, 36, depending on the day. So
Total in the district?
from last year at this time to this year at this time.
Okay, 36 total. Okay, thank you.
We'll verify that though. His math might be a little fuzzy.
Who's a math teacher?
That's why I said that.
Elsa, I can get you an exact number.
But now you gotta keep in mind that compounds, right? So 2023, we were down 60, 2022, we were down 80, right? Like, you know what I mean? Sure. Yeah, we'll get that for you.
Like about 10 years here.
See, hey, math, right? Anybody else, have anything?
I had one more thing.
Go ahead, Derek.
And I think you guys went over it and you showed it, and I think it was like 71%, and I think it has to do with free and reduced lunch or getting, we were like, oh, if we get over a percentage, we'd get more
Yes.
money. So is that free and reduced lunch? Or
It's,
is that
well, it's the unduplicated.
application?
It's the unduplicated
Unduplicated?
students, so which is tracked in CalPAD. So
Uh.
if they qualify for any of the 3 categories, foster youth, English learner, or low socioeconomic, then they're in that what they call unduplicated. And so the unduplicated rate is as of the CBED census day.
Mhm.
And then what they do is they take the 3-year average, like a rolling average every year. So if you're over 55%, then you get additional supplemental and concentration grant, and then that has to be used directly for services for students.
Okay, so we're already over.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we've gotten that every year.
I didn't know if we were like
No,
right there. Okay.
no,
The more you. I'm correct, the more you get over that 55% though, the more comes back to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So if we were to find more.
yeah,
kids,
so
'cause
we got like 80%, then it'd be a little more funds coming our way.
Okay, so do you think there are kids out there or no?
I know they send out these alternative income forms that go out there, so we're doing our best to find them if they are out there. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you say is the current percentage that we're at right now?
about 71.25.
Okay.
And that, if you look at our county, that's a pretty high
Mhm.
percentage there.
So and every categorical program that the state puts down, they have different formulas for calculating how we get our money. One of the ELOP, the expanded learning program. Right now, it's if you are 75% or more unduplicated, you're funded at a higher rate. Next year, they're looking at making that 55%. So we would get the higher rate. Right now, we're getting what they call the tier 2 rate. Because we're just barely off that 75%.
Mm.
So different funding. With their different formulas and their different criteria, the higher we can get that number, the more dollars will come back to us, whether it's Title I, whether it's federal dollars or state dollars, depending on how they're calculated.
And right now, we receive that data through that form that they provide, like at the beginning of the school year, that they have parents send back.
Yes.
Okay. And we only collect that data at the beginning of the year?
We have a certain window of time that we can collect that.
Okay.
Remember that that's part of it. There's also the EL, so like EL students,
Mhm.
and then your foster youth. So it's 3. Now, if they count for one, if they meet one of the criteria for that, then that's the only way we can count. Yeah. Say, okay, we have a kid that's both a foster youth, an EL, and then free and reduced or SED. And say that we're gonna count them 3 times, we can only count them once in that case.
Okay.
So we could be more aggressive to try and get low income or, people to
Yeah.
fill out the form to try and.
Right.
Bump that number up.
I think we got about as aggressive as we could get this
Okay.
year. We were very. And this is the part where. Going away from. The traditional national school lunch forms. Going to what they call the community eligibility provision. Where everybody eats free which is what the big push was for the universal meals, which is great. But they didn't anticipate the impact that would have on the LCFF calculation because there was no fail safe for not collecting lunch forms. Everybody was
Mhm.
collecting the lunch forms. Now parents know we don't have to do a lunch form anymore. We don't have to give you this information. So there has been a lot more pushback. But we've been trying to educate parents and say it's not just for lunch. It funds a lot of other programs too. And so doing it that way, some parents know they're still not going to qualify, but we're trying to get everybody to fill them out as much as we can.
Mhm.
But we spend about 2 weeks at the like mid to end of September. Making phone calls to get as many as we can.
You pass out a gift card?
We've done raffles before. We've done, yeah, I think we do need some sort of incentive,
Yeah.
probably as well, to get them back.
Yeah, I've seen other districts do that where if you give back the form, they'll put your name in a bucket for a grocery gift card or whatever.
That's a good idea.
Mhm.
That's a good idea.
And then for attendance, does the county give you guys money to try and encourage attendance?
No.
Oh, okay.
There is a program that starts in the fall. I don't have all the information for that yet for the attendance recovery. So there is a program where how we do Saturday school to reclaim attendance at the high school level. There's a way we can do it through our ELOP and our after school programs.
Okay.
so that to recover attendance, which will be great for elementary and middle school students. So that goes into effect July, I believe. Yes, this coming school year. So that'll be a way for us to recap some of the, if you miss a day, if you do a certain amount of time in the after school program, then we can recapture your attendance for a certain amount of time. So we're looking into we're waiting for more information on that program to be released.
Derek, were you referring to the county's everyday counts campaign?
I was, but that was nice to know. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I
So
didn't know.
yes, last year, all the districts pitched in some money to the county and then it was dispersed out in the matter of prizes and radio, feeds. So I don't know if you heard things on the radio about everyday counts type thing and our students were getting prizes. This year, that's not happening. But if you look at the attendance in 23, 24, last year's attendance, it was 93.01. This year, at our first interim, it's 95.1. So I would almost those prizes didn't seem to increase the attendance. I think what happened with those prizes was for those kids that were coming every day, already they got awards. So it didn't, I'm not sure it reached the students that weren't coming. So.
Do I have anything else?
Sure.
All right, we'll adjourn tonight at 6:07 PM. And we will see everybody on Monday.